Hello everyone, bonjour à tous. I'm Stéphane Widry, Global Executive Director. Thank you for joining us today on behalf of the International Life Sciences Institute and its Global Federation of Entities. I'm immensely pleased to announce the launch of the new US and Canada research program, which will address nutrition, food safety, and sustainability issues most important to supporting the public health. Spearheaded by an all-new staff, an unparalleled research portfolio, as well as re-envisioned governance and funding model, the ILSI research program in the US and Canada aims to become a leader in clear-sighted, impactful scientific research that is also global in its scope. During the next hour, together with Dr. Joanna Dwyer, Dr. Connie Weaver, and Dr. April Steele, we want to introduce ILSI research program in the US and Canada, its governance model with a governance committee and the science board, as well as the 9 new research projects we are proposing. Each project leader has prepared a short video to explain why the topic is relevant, what needs to be or could be done, and why ILSI is best positioned to support such an initiative. Toward the end of the meeting, we will take your question. You can ask them using the chat function on the sidebar, as shown on the bottom of the right slide. Before presenting the new research program, I thought I'd say a few words about ILSI for those of you who are not familiar with our organization. ILSI is a non-profit federation of 10 institutes. You can see them on the map in countries and regions across the globe, dedicated to generating and advancing emerging science and groundbreaking research to ensure food are safe, nutritious, and sustainable. ILSI convenes scientists at the forefront of research of nutrition, food safety, and sustainability, and operate within a framework of the highest interest principle of scientific integrity. ILSI trusted experts and volunteers around the world work synergistically and transparently across academia and the public and private sector. For more than 40 years, ILSI scientific activities have spread to most part of the world. ILSI will continue its work by strengthening its research to include addressing global research needs in the US and Canada. Leading scientists, experts representing academia, government, civil society, organizations, and industry from around the world work with us to identify and address existing and emerging issues impacting public and environmental health. Convening intellectual expertise and pooling financial resources allows us to address critical and emerging scientific issues and ensure that only quality and impactful science is pursued. Our belief that the engagement of both public and private sector is essential for meaningful progress is shared by our partners, collaborators, and members. Together, we achieve more than an organization or entity can accomplish alone. ILSI's private sector supporting organization can customize their involvement in ILSI by choosing the geographical regions and projects the best aligned with their prioritized scientific interest. Thousands of stakeholders are reached through ILSI's work, event, and research. And despite the global COVID-19 pandemic, the ILSI Federation organized 111 workshop symposia and scientific session in 2021, including the all virtual ILSI annual meeting last spring. ILSI authored or contributed to 35 scientific publications in 2021 and more than 1,000 since ILSI's foundation in 1978. None of them have been retracted. On ILSI YouTube channel, our scientific video were viewed 64,000 times in 2021. And finally, as I mentioned earlier, we have 10 scientific institutes in countries and regions throughout the world. So now I'd like to provide a little bit of background of why ILSI is establishing today a new scientific research program in the US and Canada. End of 2020, we surveyed about 140 of our public and private stakeholders, and the main feedback we heard was there has to be an ILSI presence in North America. Under the leadership of Dr. Connie Weaver, a former ILSI Global Co-Chair, a working group of 15 nationally recognized scientists from the US and Canada met with the tasks of developing a new governance and funding model, as well as a totally new robust international project portfolio with a special US and Canada perspective. We're happy to officially launch the new US and Canada research program today. ILSI has four main functions. ILSI Global, has four main functions, and therefore four sources of income, which makes it incredibly competitive when compared to other research organizations. So to explain why the new ILSI US and Canada research program is going to be very competitive in terms of management and administrative cost, I thought I'd explain very briefly ILSI's global four sources of income. First, to support the ILSI Federation coordination effort, the ILSI Global Office collects an assessment fee from the various institutes of the Federation. Second, ILSI publishes one peer-reviewed journal, Nutrition Reviews, and two scholarly books, Present Knowledge in Nutrition and the upcoming Present Knowledge in Food Safety, which provides income from sale and subscription. Third, ILSI Global is launching at the moment an ILSI Global Research Program, which aims to work on international grants. And indeed, we just recently submitted our first multi-million grant proposal, working closely across multiple ILSI institutes with our ILSI Southeast Asia region and ILSI India colleagues and their public and private stakeholders. And finally, ILSI Global fourth function is to manage this new US and Canada research program. Unlike most research NGOs, ILSI US and Canada will not charge a membership fee. And while we will rely on foundation and corporate funding to launch projects, we will rely as much as possible on public funding to sustain the various programs in the long term. At this early stage, there is no funding that is generated by this US and Canada research program. Money for operation currently comes from the ILSI Global budget. It is now time for me to give the floor to Dr. Johanna Dwyer, Chair of the ILSI US and Canada Governance Committee. Johanna?
Thank you, Stefan. Just showing this slide again, I'm going to be talking about the Governance Committee. I'm at Tufts Medical Center. Next slide, please. Our function is twofold. The first is to ensure that all of ILSI's mandatory policies and scientific integrity principles are upheld. And some of you probably read the American Journal of Clinical Nutrition, I think it was in 2009, which stated those principles. And I think they're well known to most scientists. Objective design under the scientific investigator's control, no reimbursement, encourage publication, full disclosure of interests, no undisclosed authors, access to data, and transparency. So that's very important. And the second is to oversee the integrity of procedures, communications, budget, recruitment of supporting organizations, use of funds received, and also approving the science board members. What we're looking for is science for the public good, collaborative, deliberately international, shared values, government, academe, private sector, no lobbying or policy recommendations, and of course, adhering to the code of ethics and conflict of interest. So this is what we're up to. These are the wonderful people who are helping on this. Just to mention a few of them, Dr. Clemens, Roger is known to many people for his work as president of the Institute of Food Technologists in the past. Dr. Kara Dow, who's on the ILSI Global Board. Dr. Catherine Field, who's at the University of Alberta, and also an ex-president of the American Society for Nutrition. Dr. Suzanne Kettler at Firmenich. Dr. Esther Myers, who was the science officer at the American Academy of Nutrition and Dietetics, and before that, a colonel in the U.S. Air Force, and now is working on as an independent scientist. Dr. Tia Raines at Ajinomoto, and Dr. Pamela Stark-Reed, who is at U.S. Department of Agriculture in the Ag Research Service, and previous to that was at NIH. and then Dr. Weaver, who I'll turn the floor over now, who's ex officio. I should mention that there are 8 members, less than 50% private sector. Next slide.
Hi, so I'm Connie Weaver, and I recently joined San Diego State University. I've been involved with ILSI for many, many years. It's my privilege to be the inaugural chair of the US and Canada Science Board. And the functions of this board are to review and coordinate the overall scientific research program, to be cognizant of scientific validity, coherence with the ILSI entities and objectives, feasibility, and a sense of presence of timeliness and urgency. We will monitor the composition of committees as well as scientific advisors to ensure scientific integrity through providing guidance to the committees, identifying emerging issues, and advising the government's committee on scientific matters. These are the wonderful people that we'll be starting to work with. And for all of our activities, I want to emphasize there's room for growth. So we are very interested in people who might want to be on the science or governance board or any of the committees for the research charters we're going to propose. And there's even room for completely new ideas that we haven't gelled at this point. So I'll chair this committee initially, and most of these names are familiar to you, I think. Reagan Bailey, Texas A&M, Stuart Craig, IFF, Cindy Davis, USDA, Michael Doyle, University of Georgia, Jonas Giza, Procter & Gamble, Stephen Hermansky, FDA, Leanne Jacobs, North Carolina State University, Christine Koo, Ocean Spray, Michael McBurney, University of Guelph, Janice Rueda, ADM, Leela Saldana, independent scientist, also works with NIH Office of Dietary Supplement, Jan Willem van Klinken with Brightseed, and Johanna Dwyer is ex officio in her role as chair of the governance committee. And as I mentioned, if you want to join this great board, let us know about this. You will be seeing some of these people later, and some of those names have been working for many months in this group of 15 scientists that tried to brainstorm and identify what topics are very timely with a perspective on what are global needs in the area of food safety, sustainability, and nutrition that could be led by US and Canada, but would involve other ILSI entities around the world and even other partners outside of and beyond ILSI. And the notion isn't to be comprehensive in any one of these research topics, but to find the niche that ILSI has the talent and connections to make some progress and advance the field. So we identified about 20 topics in the beginning and prioritized them based on the items you see here: potential impact, novelty of ideas, meaning we didn't want to be redundant of other organizations, global issues and collaboration opportunities, integrated transdisciplinary and translational aspects, integrated nutrition, food safety, food technologies, and food security, and from a perspective on what's timely, what's relevant to our stakeholders, what's of interest to the public and all the tripartite members, for attracting new members, as well as can the project get done in a timely manner. So we also considered prospects for public funding, because that's the new requirement, and to meet other ILSI mandatory policy requirements. So we worked on project charters that we will present today in videos. So the 9 projects that we developed a charter for to start with, which can be modeled and added to, are in these three areas of ILSI's interests: nutrition, food safety, and sustainability. So first are the 5 nutrition projects that you're going to see videos on, and then we'll come back to food safety and to sustainability. So for the 5 projects associated with nutrition, we're going to hear pre-taped little vignettes on what we're thinking about for these charter research programs that, once a committee is formed, will evolve towards the practicalities and the interests of those committees. So let's listen to them, and then we'll hear comments from April Stull from Baylor University.
Hello, I'm pleased to present the charter we've been developing on applications of globally harmonized nutrients. There have been several groups that have attempted to create average nutrient requirements, like the estimated average requirement of the Institute of Medicine or the average requirements by EFSA and others. And then they add a value for a safety net for individuals, the RDA for the Institute of Medicine, RNI, PRI, etc. Wouldn't it be wonderful if there was just one set of global nutrient requirements so that we could all use it as a common foundation for our needs? Such a concept was proposed by Lindsay Allen in her article in Advances in Nutrition in 2019. The idea of a globally harmonized nutrient requirement is that all people respond biologically similarly. Now, there might be a need for regional adaptations due to bioavailability, but that can be done easily from a set of globally harmonized nutrients. So the uses are to provide a common basis for harmonizing food labeling, formulating and labeling bioavailable nutrient content per serving, assessing and planning intakes of populations, formulating fortified foods and other dietary products, to name a few. What can ILSI do? We can develop guidance and criteria for standardized nutrients, such as equivalencies and proposing units for food labeling. We can determine regional adaptations to harmonized average requirements based on bioavailability algorithms. Now, some algorithms have been developed for iron and zinc, amino acids, and even proteins, but more needs to be done, such as for calcium, a nutrient that is deficient in many parts of the world. With ILSI working with its federation to adapt harmonized average requirements or regional requirements adjusted for bioavailability, we can move the whole program forward. ILSI can play a role in bringing harmonized average nutrient requirements forward by determining these bioavailability factors based on dose response algorithms and other approaches. ILSI can identify the needs of the regions, including estimates of bioavailability of nutrients of concern. ILSI has the necessary relationships to identify needed dose response modeling or factorial approaches within regions, and then to guide the dissemination of the harmonized average requirements and adoption of scientifically validated bioavailability factors. So together, we can make a huge difference in this area.
Hello, I'm April Stoll, an Associate Professor of Nutrition Sciences at Baylor University in Waco, Texas. I am happy to present the charter we have developed on bioactives and functional foods. It is known that functional foods and dietary supplements provide health benefits, particularly the bioactive compounds. There are many working definitions used to define functional foods. Definitions have been developed by ILSI, the Academy of Nutrition Dietetics, the Food and Nutrition Board, Health Canada, and many other organizations. A unified definition of functional foods still needs to be established along with the appropriate functional food categories, which include conventional foods that consist of the natural bioactives in food, modified foods, these are the foods enriched or fortified with bioactives, and food ingredients. Lastly, we need guidance for assessing bioavailability, efficacy, and safety of bioactives not only in functional foods, but also in dietary supplements. This needs to be established before guidelines and recommendations are developed. This is a recent framework on bioactive dietary substances developed by Dr. Allison Yates and colleagues. This framework was published in Advances in Nutrition in 2021, and it evaluates the potential health benefits of dietary bioactives in food forms. The framework includes a four-step decision-making process. First, you characterize the bioactive, then you evaluate the safety, conduct efficacy review, and lastly, decide on the recommendation. All substeps within each framework must be met in order to proceed to the next step. This framework could be used for functional foods and also modified for bioactives consumed in supplement form. What can ILSI do? We can develop a unified definition and evidence database for functional foods, which includes the composition, bioactives, health benefits, and safety of functional foods using the framework that was previously mentioned. We can develop guidelines and guidance for bioactives and dietary supplements. Also, we want to collaborate with the ILSI branches that have a similar interest in bioactives and functional foods. There have been symposia and task force created to further investigate functional foods, particularly with ILSI Europe, along with other ILSI branches. We want to establish a global approach to functional foods and also bioactives in general. There is much interest among ILSI branches on bioactives and functional foods, which could bring in regional perspectives to help develop collaborative definitions and guidelines, and overall, improve the health status of individuals globally. Together, we can make a global impact in this area of bioactives and functional foods.
Hello, it is my privilege to present on behalf of the group the charter that we have been developing on the multiple phases of personalized or precision nutrition. For simplification purposes, let's call it precision nutrition from now on. What is the context for this initiative? Well, first let's look at the problem. And that is clearly shown in the graphics that we have above. Is the inter-individual heterogeneity in response to diet, to food. And in this case, we have data in terms of weight loss from the diet fit study. And on the other figure, we have the heterogeneity in response to a standardized meal for triglycerides in the postprandial state in the predicted study. Those are just two examples. This applies to any intervention, whether it's dietary, behavioral, pharmacological, and this fact, this reality, has had serious consequences in many regards, including the credibility and efficacy of dietary recommendations of pharmacological therapies. What is the solution? Well, we started to work in the so-called solution back in the late 80s. And that was the birth of nutritional genetics, nutritional genomics, and the seed of today's precision nutrition. The path of this research has been tortuous, slow. Nevertheless, the evidence became strong enough for Dr. Rogers and Dr. Collins from NIH to publish in JAMA in 2020 this impactful viewpoint. Precision nutrition is the answer to what to eat to stay healthy. However, for this bold statement to become a reality, precision nutrition must provide scientifically sound, practical, and clinical relevant solutions to alleviate the current health crisis that currently involves both chronic and infectious diseases. It has to elicit the interest of multiple sectors. It needs measurable outcomes, and it needs validation in different landscapes and applications in clinical settings. So based on these premises, we elaborated some key practical and highly relevant objectives. First, to propose standardized terms, definitions, for personalized and precision nutrition. To develop a theoretical framework with principles for evaluating the science and applying the evidence to create and market personalized precision products and services. To identify the research needed to bring the science to its solid application in business and healthcare practice. To identify the best research practices for benefits and risks associated with precision nutrition. Moreover, we need to create educational materials for diverse groups of stakeholders related to genetics and other omics, as well as artificial intelligence and machine learning. To accomplish these objectives, we need to begin with a series of activities, including publications, scoping systematic reviews, viewpoints, position statements, a website with content for all the stakeholders, and also to organize workshops or sessions at annual regional meetings where we can work and elaborate some of the activities indicated above. What ILSI brings to the table? ILSI will bring a better and comprehensive understanding of the value of precision nutrition approaches to the nutrition care process and identifying patterns and promising directions pertinent to all stakeholders. ILSI will have an impact on determining the current state of science, the identification of future research needs, facilitating input to funding agencies, and also the best practices, principles, guidelines for the application of precision nutrition. It's very important to consider that ILSI is global in geography and global in stakeholders. There are no international programs in precision nutrition, and this places ILSI in a pivotal position to answer the question of what to eat to stay healthy for everybody, one at a time. Thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you, everyone. I'm Roger Fielding, the Associate Center Director of the Jean Mayer USDA Human Nutrition Research Center on Aging at Tufts University in the USA. I want to present to you the Healthy Aging, Geriatrics, and Sarcopenia project proposal. I just want to emphasize that sarcopenia currently is being defined as the age-associated loss of skeletal muscle mass and function. And I would argue that this is an unrecognized global syndrome of advancing age. We define sarcopenia as a syndrome characterized by progressive generalized loss of skeletal muscle mass and strength with the risk of adverse outcomes such as physical disability, poor quality of life, and death. And I believe that sarcopenia is one of the prime underlying substrates for the loss of independence among older adults. Much work has happened in the last 10 years in the development and recognition of sarcopenia. We currently have a specific ICD-10 registration code for sarcopenia that was established in 2016. I think there's universal global agreement that the components of sarcopenia include decline in muscle mass, decline in muscle strength, and a reduction in physical performance capacity. More recently, there have been novel approaches to the systematic, unified development of a definition of sarcopenia. Some of those initiatives have been occurring in Europe, the EWGSOP2 from the European Working Group on Sarcopenia, an American consortium called the Sarcopenia Definitions and Outcomes Consortium, or the SDOC, and groups in Asia and Australia have also been working diligently to develop definitions and operational definitions for sarcopenia. Our project proposal is to identify nutrient requirement changes with age, because we think this has a profound effect on body composition with advancing age, particularly changes in muscle mass and function. To be able to identify valid and reliable screening and assessment tools for geriatric-related conditions and diseases such as sarcopenia, compare and contrast recommendations of existing bodies on the prevention, screening, diagnosis, progression, and treatment of sarcopenia, and really work with the ILSI Federation to determine needs of other regions worldwide on this important age-related syndrome. Over the next year, we'll establish a committee to address important gaps in aging literature on age-related nutrient requirements and valid and reliable screening tools for the assessment of frailty, sarcopenia, and other geriatric-related conditions. We hope that we can strengthen ties internationally between scientists and health professionals that will work on screening and assessment of these conditions, not only in the US and Europe, but in Australia, New Zealand, Singapore, Taiwan, and gradually expand worldwide. We hope to also begin work on a document that will sort of establish for the first time best practices for the prevention, screening, diagnosis, progression, and treatment of sarcopenia based on the results of existing literature and interactions with other authoritative groups and bodies. And this will only be accomplished by working with ILSI branches ongoing, but in particular branches dealing with similar concerns who we will contact first. And hopefully our ultimate outcomes will be the development of key publications on screening, assessment, and tools to evaluate sarcopenia and other age-related geriatric syndromes. We hope to publicize and widely disseminate this work by giving presentations at annual and regional meetings, work continually to expand our overall understanding and knowledge about sarcopenia as a syndrome of advancing age. And really, what's important, I think, globally is to develop simple screening tools to assess sarcopenia risk and begin to identify and intervene in the underlying lifestyle factors that increase sarcopenia risk. And of course, those are related to things like diet, proper nutrition, physical activity, and other potentially health-promoting lifestyle behaviors. This has an enormous impact and global reach. When we think about the prevalence of sarcopenia being somewhere between 15 to 40% of the older population, really depending on age, the prevalence increases with advancing age. And when we know that the dramatic demographic transition that's taking place worldwide, if we look carefully at the proportion of individuals over the age of 50, comparing 2014 here to 2050, we can see the dramatic shift, not only in middle and upper income countries, but in lower income countries as well, this dramatic increase in the proportion of individuals living to older and older ages. And I just want to finish by mentioning that the fastest segment of the growing older population are individuals over the age of 80. And I think we know very little about their nutritional needs, their lifestyle behaviors, and what interventions really are going to help those individuals over the age of 80. Thank you very much.
Hello, I'm Michael McBurney on the Science Board for ILSI US and Canada, and I'm delighted today to have the opportunity to present a concept that is being developed on open data sharing for clinical food and nutrition trials. As most of us know, clinicaltrials.gov has been in service for considerable time, serving researchers, patients, their families, and the general public with information on publicly and privately supported clinical studies. In fact, researchers have to have registered clinical trials before they can ultimately publish those in peer-reviewed journals. The website is maintained by the National Library of Medicine and the National Institutes of Health, and it's accessible to everyone worldwide. On January 25th, 2023, the NIH is introducing a new policy for data management and sharing practices. When this policy takes effect, researchers will have to submit a data management and sharing practice as part of their NIH research grant application. And those that receive funding, their institutes will have to implement a data management and sharing practices. The goal of this policy is to improve the use of research resources, data quality, and to support scientific integrity. This issue will only at this point be applied to NIH funding, but the greater issue is that there is not a universal data management and sharing platform. In fact, most institutions, universities are trying to implement their own. And these database platforms are not standardized. They're dispersed across all these different institutional systems. And furthermore, privately funded clinical studies or studies that aren't funded by the NIH will not necessarily be included. So the proposal that ILSI US and Canada has for your consideration is first to form a committee to review and identify attributes of existing databases, because there are examples of where data from multiple centers and studies are being integrated and more available for research. So there's the European Prospective Investigation into Cancer and Nutrition, EPIC. There's the Fatty Acids and Outcomes Research Consortium, FORCE, here predominantly within North America. And certainly there may be others that we're unaware of. The second objective is then to use this information that's gained to develop requirements, standards, and best practices for managing, archiving, and sharing data for clinical food and nutrition trials, regardless of funding. So not restricted just to NIH, but looking at privately funded clinical studies, studies that might be in other parts of the world funded by other agencies. So the deliverables that ILSI US and Canada would have then is one, to have identified the standards, the requirements, the best practices then for managing, archiving, updating, correcting errors where necessary, and sharing that data for any study that involves nutrition and clinical outcomes. Secondly, to leverage the strength of the ILSI federations to really ensure that this project and these goals determine the needs and fit the needs for other regions so that we can see the development of universal protocols and standardizations of these protocols for the globe. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you. As stated earlier in the presentation, my name is April Stahl, and I am an Associate Professor of Nutrition Sciences at Baylor University in Waco, Texas. I am happy to be a part of the launch of the new ILSI US and Canada, and I've enjoyed participating in the creation of the scientific portfolio for the nutrition research program. My research interests are in functional foods and chronic disease prevention, and I'm very excited about leading the Nutrition Project Charter, Bioactives, and Functional Foods. As a mid-career researcher in academia, leading the Bioactives and Functional Foods Charter will provide many collaborative opportunities with other scientists from academia, government agencies, and institutions and industry. Another benefit of the ILSI's research program in the US and Canada is the opportunity to network and collaborate with the other 9 ILSI entities around the globe, and also have access to the new ILSI Global Research Program, which works on international grants that bring together researchers from the public and private sector from the ILSI Federation. These various opportunities will allow researchers like myself to collaborate internationally on different research projects and expand my professional visibility. I look forward to collaborating with other scientists with similar perspectives and also coming to an agreement with those who have different perspectives. Different perspectives always helps to make research stronger. I view ILSI US and Canada as the missing piece to the puzzle. And now that we have launched ILSI US and Canada, that puzzle is now complete. As a team, meaning all ILSI branches, we can advance the area of functional foods and bioactives, not only in functional foods, but also in dietary supplements. Together, we are stronger in building our communities, addressing knowledge gaps, and improving the nutritional and health status of individuals globally. Next, Dr. Connie Weaver will discuss the food safety project charters.
Thank you, April. So our second of 3 platform areas is food safety, and we have 2 videos for you to tell you what's been dreamed on for these charters.
Hello, I am Hélène Tournu, the Scientific Program Manager at ILSI Global and ILSI US and Canada. ILSI recently established a new strategic plan and restructuring of its federation, encompassing the development of the novel scientific portfolio being presented to you today. This opportunity to renew the scientific program in alignment with ILSI's mission and in which ILSI can have a meaningful impact led us to explore new relevant territories in the food safety area, and in particular in the cell-based food products area. The global context of cellular agriculture sets the stage for this project. With the global demand for animal-based protein estimated to double by 2050, fundamental changes in agriculture and food production seem inevitable. Providing food for the increasing population is a challenge that coincides with the growing pressure and need to reduce negative environmental impacts. Industrial biotechnology innovation and cellular agriculture in particular hold great promises in providing nutritious, safe, and healthy food independently of seasonal and geographical inputs. As an example, the Aim for Climate initiative led by the United States and the United Arab Emirates and followed by several countries around the world seeks to address climate change and global hunger via climate-smart agriculture and food system innovation over the next 5 years. So the time seems right to engage in such a project. Within the context of health and safety, very few peer-reviewed studies have been published thus far. The first one of its kind, led by Hong et al. And published in 2021, established an industry perspective of what a food safety framework would look like for cultivated food products. From tissue or cell procurement to production, collection, and food processing steps, the authors thoroughly decipher and identify the future needs of food safety assessment and requirements. And while some standards already in place for marketed products will be applicable to cell-based products, other standards will be process-specific. There is hence a need to urgently fill the research gaps, which could be tailored around the safety aspects of genetic modification approaches and outcomes specifically used for the cell-based product, or the direct comparison between the final cell-based product and conventional products, or the definition of standards for safe residue levels of the different required inputs such as growth factors, antibiotics, scaffold, and novel inputs. This project seeks to contribute to the field in addressing these research gaps. It also aims to narrow the gap between a rapidly growing food sector and a limiting pool of evidence-based safety-related published studies. Leveraging on a multipartite approach to bring together the industry as well as the health and nutritional perspective. Finally, the project seeks to advance the research on safety aspect of new elements versus whole products derived from lab-grown cell lines. So what can ILSI do and what kind of impacts can this project have globally? ILSI's experience lies in pre-competitive research, and ILSI has the capability to facilitate large collaborative projects in that space. ILSI's strong suit also lays in building public-private partnerships, which would be central to this project. This project would be embedded within an international network via ILSI's federation, comprised of 10 entities around the world. Finally, ILSI can accelerate the transfer of knowledge in this area of research through its broad audience of stakeholders. Thank you.
Good afternoon. My name is Leanne Jacobs. I'm a professor in the Department of Food Bioprocessing and Nutrition Sciences at North Carolina State University, and I'm here to talk about two of the ILSI charters. The first one being food safety at the interface between food, water, agriculture, and the environment. So this is project number 8, and the context of this project is that food safety is a public health issue, and we cannot have a safe food supply without considering the triad of environmental, animal, and human impacts in the farm to fork continuum. And this is highly consistent with what is now called the One Health concept, which is an integrated and unifying approach that aims to sustainably balance and optimize the health of people, animals, plants, and ecosystems, recognizing that these systems are all closely linked and interdependent. And in point of fact, we are increasingly becoming aware that there is an environmental origin for many of the microbial and chemical contaminants that enter the food supply. That adds certainly a level of complexity because managing environmental contamination in general is quite a complex task. And accordingly, and also consistent with the One Health principle, is the need for cross-disciplinary collaboration. So in terms of our proposed objectives and activities, they fall into 3 major categories. The first is that we intend to identify both product pathogen and product chemical contaminant combinations that would be considered of high priority for cross-disciplinary research. In the next phase, we intend to produce a systematic review of these high priority food contaminant combinations and then use that for potential research prioritization down the line. And finally, recognizing there is a need to collaborate pretty extensively in this type of work, we will establish a network of food and environmental microbiologists, toxicologists, with expertise also in plant and animal agriculture as well as public health, in order to effectively address these emerging and recalcitrant issues. What do we intend for our outcomes and impacts to look like? Well, certainly through its worldwide network, ILSI can foster interdisciplinary collaboration and help to bring together well-respected scientists having diversity of expertise plus global representation. ILSI also has pretty extensive industry representation, which means that the research and outreach that comes out of these types of efforts is relevant to the needs and practices of those entities that are producing our food supply. ILSI also has a long history of sponsoring targeted meetings and white papers and issuing scoping or smaller project funding to get sort of jumpstart some of these collaborative projects. And it is our hope that the future research needs and agendas that come out of this initiative can be effectively used to influence funding agencies and facilitate high-profile projects that will indeed address the nexus between food, water, agriculture, and the environment.
So the third platform of our research charters is in the area of sustainability. So 2 more videos on our concepts. Returning to Leanne first.
So the second charter that I would like to speak about today focuses on the impact of climate change on food safety, sustainability, security, and nutrition. And the context for this project, which is project number 9, is how can we feed a large and geographically dispersed human population in the midst of unpredictable climate conditions? And the figure shown on the right-hand side of this slide, it was taken from a 2012 paper that looked at climate change and food security with a focus on developed countries. And you can see here that climate change is driven both by natural events as well as by anthropogenic or human-associated events, and leads to a variety of environmental impacts. Now, of course, those environmental impacts affect many different systems, but our focus here in this particular project is on agriculture and food production and processing. Those effects in turn move on to specific effects on food that affect human health, both affecting or impacting the incidence of infectious and non-infectious diseases. I do want to point out that the impacts of climate change on the food supply are likely to have greater impact on vulnerable populations and on developing countries. And these oftentimes lack the financial resources and infrastructure to effectively deal with these issues. But that is an important consideration in the ILSI Charter, that we will indeed focus on these populations and these types of living conditions. So what are our proposed objectives and activities for this project? Again, it falls into 3 categories. We intend to network by identifying representative experts in diverse fields, and that can include nutrition, microbiology, toxicology, certainly environmental sciences, all aspects of ag and public health, and others too, if relevant. And these individuals will serve in an advisory capacity to this project. In our scoping phase, we will produce a systematic review of current understanding and emerging concerns about the role of global climate change in all of these issues associated with food safety, sustainability, security, and nutrition. And based on our scoping, we intend to strategize by identifying novel ways to integrate food safety, nutrition, and sustainability into the global climate change research agenda, which is likely to be blossoming and growing considerably over the next 20 years. In this case, our outcomes, impacts, and global reach are quite similar to the previous project, project number 8. And so I'll go through this slide relatively quickly. Certainly through its worldwide network, ILSI can help us foster interdisciplinary collaborations, which are critical to the success of this charter. Industry representation allows us to work within the confines of what is relevant and practical to implement, and yet still address the issue of climate change and the food supply. ILSI has the capability to sponsor meetings, white papers, and issue scoping funding. And we're hopeful that future research needs and agendas will be informed by the activities of this project. That is both ILSI research agendas as well as national and international agendas, resulting in high impact projects that address this nexus between climate change, food safety, security, sustainability, and nutrition.
Hello, my name is Shauna Lemke. I am an independent consultant specializing in food and ag regulatory science and communication with a background in toxicology and human nutrition. I've recently had the pleasure of working and collaborating with a lot of sustainability scientists as well. And one of the topics that's at the forefront these days is soil health. And so today I am pleased to present to you a proposal that could focus on better understanding the relationship between soil health and human health. Let's start with a little bit of background and context on this. So soil science, like a lot of sciences, has deep roots more than 100 years ago with early discoveries that were quite reductive in nature, meaning one of the most important first discoveries was that nutrients like nitrogen in the soil were critical for increasing plant productivity. This was an amazing discovery because fertilization of soil led to greater productivity of crops and had major impacts on food security. But of course, that's not the entire story with soil. And over the decades, additional research understood the importance of soil conservation, preventing erosion for water quality, as well as the health of the soil. And more recently, a more expansive definition of soil health has emerged, one that, of course, recognizes the importance of nutrients and contaminants in soil, but a lot of focus now on building soil organic carbon and the benefits that can have, as well as the complexity of the soil microbiome. And so as effort is put into understanding this and developing practices to improve soil health, the question is, what impact does this have, if any, on health, food safety, nutrition of food? And so we envision a project here that would first and foremost focus on creating some research questions. And so there are probably two large categories we could consider at the beginning. First, there is a lot of research, a lot of commitments being made by the food value chain to increase the use of soil health practices in row crops like corn and soy. These are products that are really important for producing animal feeds as well as for refined ingredients. And so if we focused in this area, the question would be, how do these new soil health practices change the nutritional profile of animal foods or human foods? Are there other impacts like mycotoxin contamination that these practices might change for the better or worse? A different research focus could be on more minimally processed or foods eaten whole, like fruits or vegetables or nuts. And here again, the research questions could be various, anything from the nature of microbial contamination to positive microbes and changes in nutrients and phytonutrient levels influenced by soil health practices. So what we envision as outcomes for this kind of work is first and foremost establishment of a committee, a network of public and private scientists with the breadth of scientific experience to tackle these complex issues. And with that group focusing on those couple of research questions and then conducting a comprehensive literature review and synthesis to understand the state of the science, which would allow us then to identify gaps and set research priorities. And of course, given the breadth of the ILSI network, the ability to bring together different sectors, building off a lot of the ag research, but bringing into that as a network that can then layer on that human health research element. So in conclusion, given the global scale of agriculture, I think it's important to understand how these changes that are being made in soil management practices that are focused really on environmental outcomes, how we might understand their impact on human health as well. So I look forward to feedback from the group and hopefully collaboration on such a project. And last but not least, I'd just like to congratulate ILSI for launching its new science research program. Thank you.
Okay, so now maybe a few words about our next step, which are extremely important, of course. So in the coming days, we will send a survey to identify interested partners, as well as a link to the ILSI US and Canada Research Program booklet, which includes a short video of the project you have seen today. Also, we will include 9 project chapters, which also include a link to the video. So if you're interested in a specific topic, you can learn more about it. We're happy to answer any question you might have now. So again, you can put your question in the chat box using the question arrow that you have on the side of the GoToWebinar application. I mentioned earlier that we're looking for seed money from foundation, private sector, or scientific institute to kick off our project, and through the survey you will receive You will be able to let us know which project you might be interested in, and if you would be willing to commit funds or another in-kind contribution. We also need to work with experts from the public and the private sector. So this is very important information to us. Then we will be able to work with the interested parties from the public and the private sector to develop further the project proposal. ILSI research program in the US and Canada offers academics the opportunity to collaborate internationally on their research and expand their professional visibility by networking with other world-renowned experts. You've seen that all our projects are connected with other parts of the world. So again, this is a great opportunity to connect with other experts from all around the world. ILSI's infrastructure provides an opportunity for public sector representatives to access research into health threats that present risks to both global and regional population, and supplies a framework to develop research methodologies to help solve these public health challenges. Finally, our program offers its collaborating private sector companies, including startups, visibility, as well as the opportunity to participate in important research projects on nutrition, food safety, and sustainability issues. Working with ILSI Global Federation, this new activity based in the US and Canada will strengthen ILSI's reach by allowing for even greater international collaboration. Together, ILSI entities, initiatives, and projects will ensure that the entire organization is addressing complex issues that will benefit the health and well-being of everyone for generations to come. So I hope you will consider becoming involved with the new ILSI US and Canada research program. Let's see now if you have a few questions. So there's still time to type in question. Do you see any, Connie or Johanna?
No.
I see one, I think, yeah. So we ask whether the presentation deck will be provided to the attendees or a list of the various references in the deck, because that would be helpful as we think through potential collaboration or research support. So indeed, as I just mentioned, we will send you in the coming days, so either tomorrow or Monday, a survey to understand, again, if you want to get involved in some of the project and which one, and how you could contribute. But we will also send you a booklet that explains the governance of this new US and Canada research program, as well as one-pagers for each project, where you will find indeed quite a lot of reference. We have developed those one-pager with a small group of experts, and it explains again what's the background, what is it we could do and what could be the outcome, and we list indeed all the references we have used to prepare those project proposals. So this is something you will receive in the coming days indeed.
Okay, so the videos will be, it'll be possible to click and get the video up.
Yeah. Each one-pager indeed include the video of the leader. So again, that will be useful for people specifically involved in interested in one or two projects. They can identify and go directly to the video, which is of interest to them.
Good.
Now, Connie or Johanna, do you want to make more comments about how exciting it was to work with all the leaders? I think again, following the first webinar we had 2 days ago, we received very, very positive feedback. I think a lot of people see the opportunities of this new US and Canada research program to work with other institutes of ILSI around the world and to create new connections, to work on bigger projects. I think Project Healing, for example, mentioned, Sarcopenia. We have an idea of the blue zone, working with our entity in Costa Rica, covering Mesoamerica, but also Japan, also Europe, and of course the US, which are the 5 zones where we have those blue zones. So again, many opportunities for the ILSI Federation, and in particular for our partners in the US and Canada.
I think one thing you are trying to build up is a list of people who might be interested in working on the committees. Isn't that correct, Connie?
That's really correct. And that's why, again, the survey will try to capture that. We're looking for funds, of course, but also we're looking for expertise. And I think that is going to be very important to have experts from Canada, from the US, potentially also from other regions. But this is indeed right.
Definitely. The 15 people we've been working with to develop the charters are wonderful, but we need more diverse ideas, more ideas for how to, what are the most needed activities among these research charters, but then also how to implement them to do the most good. But also, as I mentioned, the Science Board is very interested in entertaining other projects. So the success of everything we do depends on people who want to give their time and make a difference.
Yeah, and also maybe just to add that
it's not paid, but it's fun.
And maybe also just to mention that in the survey, you know, there's a comment box where people can refer to maybe projects ILSI US and Canada could start. So the governance committee, the science board, sorry, would review those proposals and would decide, you know, whether there are new topics we should address for this new research program. So yeah, we're really looking forward to your feedback.
So to add to what Johanna brought out in the first webinar was the notion is to bring down silos. And ILSI is a great opportunity for that because it's already interested in tripartite input and with collaborations around the world. So how better to move forward ideas that need the silos to come down to make an impact.
Correct.
Okay, well, we'd like to thank you all for your time and interest today. The ILSI team look forward to hearing from you soon. I want to, of course, thank very much Dr. Joanna Dwyer and Dr. Connie Weaver, who spent an amazing amount of time to help us to get where we are. Again, I think the ILSI Federation is extremely excited to start this new research program in the US and Canada with, again, all new staff, all new research program, new governance committee, and a very big science board, which I think also shows how important, you know, we want to focus on science. So thank you, everyone, and you'll hear from us very soon. Have a good day.